Gwen and Viego made their triumphant arrival to pro play this past week, and North American teams jumped to include them in their drafts. Viego showed up in the LCS as a triple flex in top, mid, and jungle. Gwen was also triple flexed between top lane, mid lane played by the top laner, and of course her natural role, permaban. Viego went 4-1 in the LCS, with his only loss coming in the hands of C9's Perks against the Golden Guardians. Gwen was 3-1, with CLG's Finn piloting her to her only loss against Team Liquid. With such strong results under their belts, the natural questions are, which new champion is stronger right now, and which will have more staying power in the meta? Let's start by understanding what Gwen and Viego bring to the table. Both champions are played like melee bruisers, but they express themselves in different ways. Gwen delivers a game-breaking combination of AP burst damage and survivability that can wreak havoc in teamfights. Viego is just plain game-breaking. Gwen's power fantasy involves creating pockets of control in the middle of a teamfight with her W, Hallowed Mist, which gives her bonus armor and MR and makes her untargetable for enemies outside the zone. That can buy her enough time to destroy just about any target, since she has true damage on her Q, and since so much of her damage scales with the opponent's max health. One thing Gwen lacks is crowd control, with just a slow on her ultimate, so she likes pairing with some engage or pick CC from her jungler and support. Even without setup though, Gwen's damage output and range can create kills seemingly out of nowhere. Viego is a bit different. He brings a dash and stun on his W, plus movement speed and camouflage while he's inside his harrowed path. And his ultimate is an execute, so he feels pretty self-sufficient, and you can see why he's popular as a jungler. But he actually gets picked in pro play more for his passive, which makes him briefly untargetable while he takes over a dead enemy's body, then lets him spam out their skills and get free activations of his ultimate. It's a similar vibe to Tristana, Jinx, or Darius with their ability to chain together resets. Like other reset-based champions, Viego wants to be in team compositions that can engage for him and drop a lot of health bars low at once so he can take care of the cleanup. So both champions have clear strengths, but their popularity in the pro meta isn't just about what they can do in-game, it's also their influence on the draft, stemming from their ability to flex into top mid or jungle. According to Mobalytics, on patch 11.11, Gwen is being played in top lane in 7.9% of high elo games, jungle in 1.9%, and mid in 1.0%, while going banned 32.4% of the time. Viego is being played in jungle in 6.9% of high elo games, mid 4.3%, and top 1.6% with a 15.1% ban rate. Both champions' flexibility makes them relatively safe to draft blind, since you can move them into a different role if they get countered. But despite their similar flexibility, Gwen is showing up in a lot more drafts and being picked earlier in pro drafts when she goes unbanned. When you total up both champions' solo queue presence, you get 43.2% for Gwen and 27.9% for Viego. And in pro play, Gwen had 100% presence in the first week of both LCS and LCS Academy, while Viego had 47% presence in the LCS and 40% in Academy. The LPL is following a similar trend in the early going too. In the LCS, Gwen was picked first overall by the blue team in 3 out of 4 games where she was available, and she was taken in first rotation by the red team in the only game that didn't follow the pattern, which I'm sure Dignitas regrets now after seeing Someday carry so hard against them.
Holy moly, look at the damage! Someday already grabbing one, making two, double kill over to Gwen.
What makes Gwen first pick worthy when Viego isn't? A couple of things. One is that Viego has a wider variety of weak lane matchups than Gwen does, so it's a bit more difficult to flex him out of trouble. And if Viego does fall behind early, it's more consequential than it is for Gwen. That's because Viego's team fighting is a bit more item dependent than Gwen's is. Gwen's situational tankiness in teamfights comes from her kit, and she levels up her W last, so if she's behind, she can still be very disruptive despite her damage output being a bit lower. Viego needs his items more, because he needs as much damage as possible on his ultimate to make sure he gets his first reset, and then he needs some tankiness from his items to make sure he can stick in the fight until the next reset. That's why Randuin's Omen has been so common in pro Viego builds, as either a second or third item. Even when Jose Dioto built Kraken Slayer as his mythic instead of the more popular Immortal Shield Bow, he went with Steric's Gage and Guardian Angel afterwards. Another reason Gwen is a better first pick is that it's easier to build different team comps around her, while Viego doesn't necessarily fit every comp. He wants the right kinds of teammates around him and the right kind of targets on the enemy team to execute and use his passive on. Teamfighting isn't his only strength. He can be used to win side lanes later in the game and play for map pressure too, and he has really strong trading patterns and a slight range advantage in melee matchups in lane, but there are other picks that do those things better. So depending on how the overall draft is shaping up, Viego may or may not fit your win conditions. There's one other reason Gwen gets picked earlier and more often than Viego, and that's because she's simply overtuned. She's a classic OP in the simplest application of the term. But that's exactly why we might see Viego stick around in the pro meta for longer. Gwen is destined to get some nerfs, probably to give her clearer laning weaknesses and reduce her overall damage output. If those strengths get toned down, I'm not sure her niche is unique enough to keep her at the forefront of the meta. By comparison, Viego's combination of mobility, utility, and damage combined with the uniqueness of his passive provides something that no other champion does, so I expect we'll see him outlast Gwen as the summer split plays out.
Oh my gosh, summer split. You know what that means? It's summer. And you might be thinking to yourself, time to go outside and enjoy the sun, enjoy the wilderness, go climb a mountain. No, that stuff is dangerous. You know what's safe? Alienware computers and playing games on them, including, by the way, their new X Series line of notebooks, which you can go check out at alienware.com/Travis. There's a link in the description below. Be safe. Play video games. It's the way to live. That's how I live. And I'm still alive, so clearly it's working.